On this show, we're driven by curiosity. We want to chart a path forward. The best people, the best conversations. We're on a journey and it's just getting started. All right, everybody, we're back. I'm Jack Murphy. This is Jack Murphy Live Show. I am live. We're live. We've got a great show today. As you know, if you've been following along, I have been asking for people to send me dissident artists. We're looking at ways to change the culture, change the politics through an art forms, and art aesthetic. And we've had a lot of interesting submissions. We've had musicians, we've had publications and writers. And today we've got a sculptor that I have come across that really speaks to me and speaks to my values. And I think is probably the only modern sculpture that I've ever seen that I felt moved or interested by. And so it's going to be great to talk to our guest today. And it's following on the conversation with Arthur Kwan Lee, just a tremendous painter, a visual artist whose values come out in all of his work. And we know that values are very important and we need a new aesthetic, something that's going to drive us forward. We're going to talk about aesthetics, culture, the art itself, manifestos, new movements, how all these things work together. But before we get there, let's talk real quickly about the Liminal Order. The Liminal Order is an all-men's network designed for the 21st century. We have over 800 men around the world in the Liminal Order coming together, working with each other to help produce amazing outcomes for themselves, their families, their communities. If you believe in the power of masculinity, brotherhood, and sovereignty, come down and check us out. That's liminal-order.com. Join the list. It is the only way that you can join the LO. Come down, check that out. All right, I am back here doing my little production stuff. Thanks to everybody for bearing with me on that. Here we go. Jack Murphy. We've got my guest, Fen. Here we go. Fen, how are you, buddy? Good to see you today. Thanks for coming on the show.
Hey, thanks a lot, Jack. Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
It's great to be on this show, Jack. And something I want to say before we start is I'm really happy that you are giving time and space to artists who are looking at culture in another way. And basically, we need this now more than ever because the current status quo system is not giving us the airtime we need.
Right.
So I want to say thanks so much for doing that and having me on here. And it's terrific that you provide a platform for us to be able to get these ideas out there. So that's
I appreciate it, man. It's exciting for me. I have oftentimes gone to museums and looked at sculptures and just been like, "What in the heck is this?" And nothing has ever moved me in a way that was anything remotely like what I saw what I felt when I first saw your work. And we should talk about how I first came across it. As the listeners know, we had Raw Egg Nationalists on, Baby Gravy 9 on Twitter, and he puts out a men's magazine. I think he called it like an updated Playboy, but without the nudes. So when you read it for the articles, you're really reading it for the articles. It struck me as a little bit of like Mad Magazine mixed in there and National Lampoons, but all with like an eye towards the dissident right, nationalism and sort of this new political sphere that's evolving out of the online world. And he's put together an amazing magazine, Men's World. Everybody should check it out. I also got the annual hardcover. It's like 300 pages, full glossy. It is beautiful. So you guys should check it out. And in doing my research for Raw Egg Nationalists, I came across you, sir, and he introduced me to you and to your work, and he too sees a similar expression in your art as I did and felt it related to the things that we've got going on here, our values. So let's just start off with introducing you to the listeners and to the viewers here so we have an idea of who we're talking to, give you a little bit of background and credibility, and then I want to just dig right into all of the issues, sir. So please introduce yourself, Fen.
Okay, well, I'm a sculptor working in Antwerp. Actually, that's where I'm based. I'm originally from the UK, but I now work full-time as a sculptor here in Antwerp. I have a small niche group of people who support and collect my work, give me commissions, and allow me to keep fighting the good fight, as I say. And it's if there's something that's really, you know, given me a lot of energy, is coming into the online scene. I mean, like, I haven't spent much time in the online scene, let's say. I've really just been sort of duking it out in the art scene here, trying to make my work, trying to make my sculptures, and trying to find a niche of people who actually want to sort of support this. Because in the current status quo of what's going on today, um, it's it's sort of wrong. It's not allowed to make sculpture or art that is powerful, or sculpture and art that has a kind of an essence or an archetypal, primeval connection to the past. And you know, it's almost sort of it's funny because it's sort of taboo in many respects to even be making something. I mean, you've been to art galleries today, you've been to different museums and stuff, and what you notice is the majority of the time, the sort of contemporary art world today doesn't really speak to you. There's nothing there. So you have this you walk into an art space, you walk into a gallery, and you've got this case where you see, like, people doing performances, people doing they're doing weird things with found objects. They've thrown things. They've sort of thrown paint on found objects, and they're nothing more than performative clowns, because they're not actual real artists. They're sort of being paraded in front of you as a group of performative clowns who are really just doing the bidding of essentially sort of soy globalism, in a sense, which is why I connected so well with raw egg. I think I could see a connection there with raw egg, and in many respects we share a similar fight, because what we are ultimately fighting against archetypally is this low energy, low vibration, sort of, well, I mean, he says it really great when he says sort of soy. It's this sort of soy globalism thing.
Yeah.
And in his magazine, he refers to it. And what we're really talking about is this low tier sort of vibrational art that is essentially there. It sort of acts as voodoo to kind of bring your vibration down. And myself as a sculptor today, I stand out as a dissident artist, or someone who is sort of fighting that and against that. But of course, the people that support me, it's a small group, it's a small niche of people that sort of are fighting for the same thing as I. And it's sort of like, well, it's essentially the sort of old conservative class that support me, and they kind of get what I'm fighting for. But if you look at the broader scheme of things, like the actual media, I've had some seriously funny situations where the media, they come to an exhibition of mine, and we have a conversation, and they say, "But how is this relevant today? What are you sort of attacking on the sort of political side of things? But I mean, is your work anti-Trump? Is it somehow against this political person or whatever?" And you think to yourself, God, art today is not even art. What it simply is just political comment. It's just sort of social justice warrior work. I mean, even work is to give it too much credit, but it's just a sort of a social justice expression. And the thing that's driving me now is I'm seeing there's sort of cracks are starting to appear, shall we say. I'm beginning to see that there is movement. People are getting tired of this. People are getting, they're getting exhausted by it. And, to cut a long story short, I'm a sculptor now I've been working for quite a long time, and I'm now starting to say, look, if we really want to make a stand, we're going to have to, actually start creating collectives. We're going to have to start making movements, cultural movements, and stand for something. And this is what I've mentioned before, is you ask the artists today, what do you stand for? What are you fighting for? And majority of the time, what they're fighting for is actually just the institutions that have employed them to fight for them. They're nothing more than puppets on a string. And that's the issue today. That's where we are. That's where we are, Jack. I mean, it's a pretty dark place, but it gives me energy. It gives me energy because out of that darkness, I'm driven. I'm now driven. I'm sort of like, I'm ready to go. You know?
You're inspired, man. You're inspired, and you're inspiring people. There were so many things that you just said there that I wanted to address, but the last thing that you said was that the artists today are puppets for the institutions that employ them. Hasn't that always been the case, though? I mean, hasn't that always been the case for art in general, especially pre-modern? Like, wow, all that was just institutionally driven, absolutely meant to reinforce the establishment, to reinforce power structures, to create awe in the sense of reverence for this power structure, etc. Isn't that always been the case? And wasn't there? I mean, there was a rebellion in the art scene when, I mean, photography really changed things around where you didn't have to necessarily be just capturing an image to transmit to people. And then you could start transmitting feelings and thoughts and personal expressions and the insides of your gobbledygook head. But which role for art is actually the more traditional? One reinforcing the political establishment through patronage, or being dissident? And how does that tie together today? Are we in a synthesis of that? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, look, if you look back through time, artists have always had patrons, and many artists have always been bought and paid for. But what you've mentioned there is something that not too many people are aware of. I mean, okay, you would say, yeah, hasn't this always been the case? Well, yeah, indeed it has. But not too many people are aware of it. And what you need to start bringing attention to is that when people walk into an art gallery today, or they walk into an institutional art gallery today, what they're actually engaging with is pure political propaganda to push a certain agenda. And it's not, you know, I think a lot of people walk into galleries and they sort of have this situation. Excuse the beeping outside. I'm in the center of a city here. Yeah. The situation that happens is you know, people go along to these galleries and they're looking for something that uplifts them or gives them a sense of power or energy, and makes, you know, brings a sense of sort of wholesomeness to them. And the majority of people today don't quite understand what the hell that is being presented in front of them. So it's, as you say, yeah, artists have always been bought and paid for. But if people recognize what's being pushed through them, then I think you can start to sort of peel back this onion of culture that we're in right now. And you can start to see the ideas and the philosophical standpoint of the elite and the establishment that are pushing this. Yeah. Because it's right there, it's out in the open, it's directly to, you know, it's so clear. But you need to sort of help people see exactly what they're looking at. And I think ultimately we're in a very dark place culturally, because if you look at the majority of artists that are sort of doing this work today, they're certainly not pushing anything from a wholesome perspective or anything that's powerful. I mean, at least if you look back at the art many years ago, when there was patronage and such, at least the stuff they were making was actually aesthetically inspiring, and at least it had something to actually uplift the spirit to a certain degree.
Right. There was a commitment.
We don't even have that anymore.
No, there was a commitment then at least to beauty and order. Right. And so in the aesthetics, the beauty and order came out. And in fact, that was part of reinforcing the establishment, was to keep people focused on beauty, order, and truth. And it is directly either a consequence of our current political time or an influence on it now. But they are promoting disorder, ugliness, and chaos and lies through the art. And it is a visceral feeling. I was in San Francisco a couple weeks ago, and I knew what I was getting into, but I went to MoMA, the Museum of Modern Art there. And I was hoping, I had my fingers crossed, but man, it was trash. There was so much trash there. And I took some photos and posted them on Twitter, and Arthur Kwan Lee saw them, and he was like, oh man, I know this artist. And like, he had a funny rant about it. But the feeling that you get, the values that are being transmitted are ones that lead to suboptimal or negative outcomes for society. I think we can make those connections, and we firmly believe that. Now, I would like to start here. I want to go through with the manifesto that you've got posted, what your values are, what are you trying to do, and then we're going to get to the art because people are going to be so blown away. I think audio podcast guys, I'm sorry, we are going to be doing a lot of visual stuff today. You can find it. We'll post it on Twitter and other places so you can see it. But one of the things that you and I bonded over earlier on in DMs and such was I had written a piece a couple of years ago as a result of going to this exhibit at the Hirshhorn in Washington, D.C., another one of the worst places for contemporary art. And there was a really great exhibit, actually, called Manifesto. And it had a description of various art movements, their manifestos, how it manifested in a visual aesthetic, and then what the resultant political movement was. And it's fascinating to see this holistic thing. And I called for then 2 years ago, we need new manifestos on this. We need a new aesthetic order. I'm not alone in that. There are other guys, Curtis Yarvin, somebody's been talking about this quite a bit as well. And, I run into you and I'm like, holy crap, here's a guy with a manifesto who's got values, who's creating this work and putting out in the universe. So let's talk. Talk to me about the manifesto. Talk to me about the idea of a manifesto, what yours is, what the values are, what the mission is, what it looks like, all these things. I just put it up on the screen for people to see. You don't have to read it or anything, but just talk to it.
Yeah, well, I mean, essentially it was this, to cut a long story short, there's a lot of artists and stuff working today, and there's a lot of people doing different things, and they all seem to be sort of doing their own story. They're all doing their own individual thing. And I thought that if we're really going to actually tackle the monstrous problem that we have before us, we're going to have to kind of align on a few different values that are, that make sense to us and who we are. And so I wrote this manifesto, which was in many respects for my last show, it was almost a piece of theater because I wanted to sort of bait a lot of people into a sort of a debate with me and have them get quite upset because, to even state some of this stuff in a manifesto today in the current art scene, people get very, very, very upset about it. They sort of saying, "Oh, well, what do you mean unapologetic glory? That sounds very sort of, that sounds very sort of oppressive. That sounds very colonial." It's like this weird sort of thing going on. But you're able to sort of bring this language out there, and you can very quickly see who's sort of on your side and who's very much willing to or wanting to work against you. Even just stating harmony. Harmony comes in so many different forms. But if you say, I'm looking for harmony and balance in my work, people immediately get this sort of thing. Oh, but you can't say that because, aesthetics and strength, that's completely subjective. And it's totally impossible to say what's strong and not strong, or, and so you have this weird sort of thing going on. And there was a number of, establishment artists who came forward, saw this, and they were kind of triggered by it. which was glorious. I mean, that's exactly what I wanted to do. They came right into the spider's web, but it was really, really good to actually see their sort of reaction on it. I mean, I state kill art speak because so much of what is being made today artistically is sort of hidden behind a wall of pseudo intellectualism, and they're sort of breathing some kind of fire into the nonsense that's in a lot of these art galleries and art establishments. And if you kill art speak, the whole thing falls apart. Because, of course, true art stands in its own world. It's there. You walk into the space, it stands there with a sort of a sense of glory, a sense of honor, a sense of royalty. And it breathes its own fire. And you don't need to... I don't need to stand in front of a group of people and try and convince them, like some sort of cheap car salesman. Oh, my work is about this, and take into account that I'm trying to question the current oppressive state of this and that. It's like, no, it is what it is. You can come and have a look at it. You can talk to me about it, but ultimately I'm trying to convey an aesthetic strength, a sort of primitive and primal strength that, speaks to us, speaks to who we are. And um, the wonderful thing is that I've noticed is that a number of people are they're feeling something, they get it. And
Mhm.
that's, for me, that's like a big sort of, wow, okay, this does work.
Oh
People
yeah.
do sort of understand what I'm fighting for. And they kind of, even if they don't agree with the current aesthetic manifestation that it has, they still get the metaphysical fight going on behind it, which is
Yeah.
ultimately to raise the vibration, to raise energy, to bring that sort of energy back into culture, and
Increased vitality. You use that word quite
yeah,
a bit, and I'm literally getting goosebumps hearing the things you're talking about because I mean, it's an actual physical resonance, right? Like you said the words about the values and the energy, and like my body responded with goosebumps, right? That's a literal physical resonance with the message. And in here, man, I love these phrases, right? Sculpture that dominates a space with unapologetic glory, fiery, energetic, strong, confident stories reinvigorate the creative flame, break through the walls of imprisonment, march, that's a big one, march into a new era of aesthetic vigor, create art that uplifts. Forms must be explosive, dynamic, inspiring, thrilling, honor harmony. How can we build a strong culture if we keep dwelling on anti-heroic stories? Boom. I mean, this is it, dude. This is the vision. This is the energy, man. And you and I did talk. It echoes some of the futurists like language in their manifesto. And whereas
absolutely,
Whereas
absolutely.
perhaps the futurists had a slightly different idea of where to go. The why that they had, I think, is something that we can relate to. You take influence from the futurists, and what other influences are you, exhibiting here in the manifesto I'm talking about, just in the energy of what we're doing or you're doing.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, I look at the futurists, and they had, I think the thing that I love about these sort of early modernist movements is they had a sort of revolutionary sort of fire and energy that was running through them. And I look back at the futurists because that fire still burns in their work. And I look back at the British vorticists, who were also a sort of manifestation of sort of British vorticism in a sense, because they also have a kind of fire and vitality in their work. But my journey and where I'm going right now is it's the process of trying to rekindle or try to grab back at some of these movements and try to take some of the aesthetics, that's some of the real fire. And I look back at Art Deco, I look back at Futurism, Vorticism. Um, they had something extremely vital, and I see it as something that's very much worth looking back at, because I see it as a direct hard counter to what is going on today. Essentially, if you can kind of bring those movements together, I see it as an aesthetic blowtorch that can melt through the nonsense that we're that's sort of going on around us today. We need energy now. That's the thing. We need a sort of explosive energy. And even if it's not a movement that's going to last forever, you need that kind of power now, because you need it to sort of wake people up out of the zombified state that we've walked into after the Second World War, First World War.
That's one of the reasons Art Deco speaks to me so much. It was aspirational. It was future oriented. It had well, the interiors especially had an appreciation for fine things and high quality materials. The lines just reaching, projecting, screaming straight up to the sky, and then also they built buildings that had a shape to them that the shape itself was speaking something. Whereas internationalist style that followed on later, and then whatever gobbledygook crap we've got now, that wasn't about creating a visual statement. That was about maximizing volume and maximizing space for the interior. Whereas the Art Deco building just shoots up into the sky and is inspiring. And man, did they have just a flavor for or an urge to just be expressive. I went to a bar in Denver last weekend that was the oldest running bar in Denver. It was opened in the 30s, and the room itself was built like a wine bottle. Okay, the room. And it had, it was Art Deco, 100%, totally preserved, continuous operation since 1930s. And it had, the big, strong, powerful lines and the nice lights and the cool furniture and the nice materials. And that vibe, man, I'm feeling it. And it's nowhere out there. We're not seeing it in pop culture. We're not seeing it anywhere. I'm trying to unearth these guys. Where let's just get to the art, dude. I can't keep talking about it without bringing it up because it's exciting. So I'm going to just do it. I'm going to just bring this one in and let's go. Let's just start talking about this. So what do we have here, man? First of all, what is it? How big is it? How much does it weigh? What is the medium like? Let's talk about the art itself.
Okay. So this was my sort of looking into a boxer in movement. And when you watch boxers fighting, there is this, you can sort of map their movement, and it's this, it's like the Futurists did or like the Vorticists did. You're sort of looking at that energy, and very often when I'm making sculpture, I'm looking to, I often refer to sculpture as energy realized as form, and it's about finding that sort of energetic energy, that explosive energy, and creating, sort of mapping it in a piece of work. And that's what this work is. It's a boxer that is sort of reaching out, and it's this sense of turning. It's moving. It's in movement. It's alive. It's capturing that spiritual movement. It's connected to dynamism, and it's energy realized as form. This piece is in bronze. It's 1 meter tall. I don't know the exact sort of weight of it. This is one of my smaller monumental works. I mean, ultimately, I've been working considerably bigger in stone, for example, and in other bronze works. But this is still considerable size. It's considerable weight. But it's about finding that sort of. I don't shy away from things like power and masculinity in form, or violence even, because I think those are the archetypes that we've been sort of, we've been shied away from them. You can't express that now. Why would you make that now? People, a lot of the art establishment now, they don't want this. It's too violent. It's too aggressive. It's too potent or too vital masculine. To a degree. Yeah. They don't like that. That's not part of the agenda. They don't want that sort of work. And so I look at it the other way. I'm extremely excited. I mean, it's like, it's a red rag to a bull, because I want to run towards that. I love it. I absolutely love it when you've got a sort of art curator, sort of bug man who doesn't want this sort of stuff. I'm like, then I want to do it even more, because when you're surrounded by such low vibration, you have to bring a counter. And my belief is that even in the darkest of times, small light can shine brightly. That's what I'm trying to do. That's what I'm really trying to capture.
Amen to that. What I was struck by right now is just, you are from the UK, but you live in Belgium, right? And
that's correct.
Yet here you are speaking the exact language that me and my guys in the Liminal Order here in the United States and Dissonant Right here is in the United States. And you did just get online. It's not like you grew up in this whole milieu like I have over the last like 10, 15 years. And so it's really exciting to me to hear somebody coming at this from a different avenue, even in a different country, and able to have a common language with me and see the problem similarly and want to see the same kind of solutions and who's actually doing it. So this is really inspiring for me in terms of understanding where we are globally, perhaps as a movement, in this nascent stage. And of course, we all want it to happen much more quickly, but the pace I think is picking up. And you keep using these words like vitality and vibrancy and energy and potency and power, dominate, royal. I mean, man, that's exciting. Do you have you ever read Bronze Age Mindset, by the way, by Bronze Age Pervert?
I actually haven't. If I'm to be perfectly honest with you, I'm really, really, really new to this movement and what's going on online. As
Yeah,
I've mentioned before, I've been duking it out, uh, boots on the ground, sort of fighting this battle in all sorts of places, within Belgium and outside further afield. But I've been face to face with this stuff. I'm seeing it and I'm smelling it right up front. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
yeah,
so I come here onto Twitter, for example, and you've got people like Bronze Age Pervert, or you've got so you've got someone like Raw Egg, and there's a direct connection. But I never came into this, like I was never born in this movement.
right, right,
I'm just a guy from the street I'm from the trenches. I've been fighting it out here,
right.
and it really is trench warfare.
It's
That's the way I look at it.
it's amazing. It's amazing. I'm feeling very inspired to know that different universes are producing a reaction in people that we have in common. So it gives me some additional confidence that we're fighting the good fight. We've assessed the problem accurately. These things that we're all feeling are not fake or weird or dumb or whatever. It's real reaction. Um,
Absolutely,
it is a
absolutely.
real reaction,
Yeah.
and you're delivering on the real response. Let me ask you, when you say you've been in the trenches, have you experienced, like, cancel culture? Have you experienced them trying to shut you down out of shows or, vandalizing your shops or, or your galleries and stuff? Like, what have you experienced?
Okay. I mean, this is such a broad spectrum, but I'll try and make it short for the podcast. But
Uh-huh.
I have experienced this sort of nonsense now for years, ever since I graduated. Or actually, while I was in art school, I went to an academy that was teaching, some of the more, let's say, refined traditional sculpture. And in the first early years, I was sort of experimenting with actually making things. And even going back to the time when I was making sculpture then in the academy, I had tutors who were saying stuff like, "Your work is too dominant. You can't make this work because if you make this work now, it's oppressive." Or they'll say things like, "It's a bit too masculine, Fen. You need to tone it down a bit." And I'm like, "What?" It just felt so bizarre. It felt so strange to me. But let's fast forward. When I left the academy, when I left the art school, you know, there's media interviews that get cancelled. Like, for example, I was having such a great connection not that long ago with a great journalist, and we were talking about all this stuff, and she was like, "Oh, I want to bring you," and it was going to bring me to one of the major sort of cultural magazines here in Belgium, and they were like, "Oh, we want to bring you," I'm so excited, and da da da. And then it was so funny at the last minute, they were like, the head editor in chief, contacted us, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we really can't, and we're not really that interested to bring this. It's just not really." It's not really sort of trendy today, and you're not really allowed to bring this stuff today. And then you see what they brought, and it was an artist that was just attacking Trump. I mean,
Mm,
even here, and you think to yourself, "Good God!" It's if it's not political, and if it's not attacking something that is even slightly, and I mean slightly to the right, then you're not relevant. You're not at all relevant. And I'm not a victim of this. I want it to be understood that I'm not a victim of this, but it galvanizes me and it makes me want to go further
mm,
because I see what's going on and I think to myself, we can fight this, but we need more people behind it. We need a movement. We need a collective. If you have a collective of artists, people who are cultural, people who are interested in culture, you're unstoppable. What's going on today is that we are atomized as artists, atomized, and that way we're weak. But if you can have a few artists that come together and really believe in something and share similar values, then you will simply be unstoppable. And that's the secret. And that's where we need to get to now.
I'm
And
vibrating again just listening to what you're saying, because you're absolutely right. And you need collectives not only in the art space, in the political space, in the cultural space, in your just regular community, right? We need to just get together in general, right? Like community in general
100%.
is what we need. And the atomization that we're experiencing is deliberate. They're intending to keep us separated, to break the bonds that we have, to even shame us for having bonds, right?
Absolutely.
What are you guys?
Absolutely.
What are you guys gay? Like that is not a response from the right. That is people from the left who want to diminish the power of male relationships by
Sure.
sexualizing them. And it is endemic. It's everywhere, the atomization and the collective that you're talking about, not in the communist dummy way, but in the way that we get
No,
together
no.
to do things and to push. Now, there are examples of artistic collectives throughout time, right? Where they set an idea and they're all it's emergent, it's organic. Oh, everybody moves to Paris in this time period or whatever, and they're all hanging out in the same parties and they end up painting all the same stuff. And then not the same stuff, but on the same vibe. Um,
Inspired. Yeah, inspired
yeah.
on the same vibes. Yeah.
Have you been able to connect with other artists in this way? I want you immediately to talk to Arthur Kwan Lee if you haven't yet. He's a painter of similar caliber to you. Went through the art schools, has his own gallery in New York. It was exhibited all throughout Manhattan. Got canceled because he wouldn't tone down the masculinity in his art. I mean, and the guy's like world class. So I would love for you guys to get together. But have you found other people? Is it a thing? Is it happening? Or are you alone right now?
So I recently just did a small exhibition here in Antwerp, and since getting online, getting onto Twitter, it's opened up a huge door of other potential contacts. The wonderful thing is, I actually had a anon come to my most recent exhibition, who's a philosopher, and he's an extraordinary thinker who came to my show, and he doesn't want to be mentioned, and I completely understand that. I mean, he wants to remain anonymous, but he came to my show, and he just gets it. He totally understands this approach, this way forward that I'm trying to sort of build. And it was through Twitter that I was able to connect with him, and I'm so grateful of that. I think the internet is going to be the way forward to build a movement. I've attempted to sort of, let's say, reach out to other artists in my own sort of hometown here, let's say in Antwerp, in Belgium. But there's extreme fear. You have to understand that there's extreme fear, and it's funny because I often say this thing: do you dare? Do you dare to actually step forward and say that you stand for something else than what's
Mm,
going on today? Do
mm,
you dare? And it is a dare, but I would say it's also, it goes back to that thing: stand for something. You live once, you've got this life. Live it vitally, live it gloriously. I know you might be scared, you might have a gallery cancel your exhibition, but stand for something. And that's that's the thing that I try to get forward. There are young artists that I've connected with here in Antwerp who they vibe with what I'm saying, but they're like, yeah, but I'm trying to get an exhibition, I'm trying to get a show, and they won't feature me if I come out for this. Or the strange thing is, this is the way I see it: there's a lot of sleeper cells in the art world
mm.
who actually do vibe with what we stand for, and they do actually want to go another way, but they're sort of caught in this double life. I mean, almost in a way, I was caught in it as well. You know, I was never someone who got involved in politics. I've always been cultural, but what I saw coming through culture changed my mind drastically, drastically after seeing what was going on and what was being pushed. I'm not someone who's been spending huge amounts of time reading political manuals on certain things. I see it in the culture and I feel it intuitively. I
Yeah.
see what's going on. And there's many other artists that see that too. And many of them are simply scared, which is why I say, do you dare? I think there will come a sort of a boiling point, though, where a lot of artists will cross over and they'll say, look, we can't do this anymore. We've been living a lie. I mean, Jack, imagine this. Imagine being on your deathbed. You've been going along with this art movement so long. You're on your deathbed. How awful would it be to have a moment where you think, good God, I've lived my entire life as a liar in this current situation, in this current movement, and you've just gone along with it blindly. I mean, I think that would be awful. That's a life not lived. If you're going to live a life now as an artist, live it gloriously and live it connected to the truth. And many artists are too scared to do it. But I think over time, there's going to be a point where they will step forward and they will, really stand there and fight for it. And that's what we need. That's what we need, Jack. My mission now, I'm on Twitter to make connections. I'm dreaming of a movement. The movement doesn't have to be completely one way or my way or whatever. But we need people to think visually, not just philosophize, not just to be caught up in the philosophy of what's going on today, but think visually, think aesthetically. Something that I've come in contact with since jumping onto Twitter is there's a lot of people who look at the current work that I'm making and they say, but it's not trad enough. The word they use, trad, traditional. And I think to myself, okay, so where do we go back to? Where do you want to go to? Show me. Where do you want to go? And they sort of, it's always wibbly wobbly because they sort of say, well, we should go back to the Renaissance, or we should go back to, the Baroque. And I get that. That's a fantastic period. Don't get me wrong. That was wonderful creations happened then. But we're living in a spiritual dark age. We're living in a spiritual and aesthetic dark age. Let's make a start now. We've got the time now. Let's do it now. Build something now, and we can dream of a future, a far more glorious future. That's the important thing. That's where we need to go forward now.
Interesting. I definitely want to talk to you. It's on my list here about connections to the past and the value in looking backwards to the past. I'm going to push that a second though, because I want to keep talking about the art. Let's talk about this one, buddy. What do we have here? This is powerful.
Yeah. So this is actually just a quick sketch. It's a sketch in clay. It's a sketch model that I used to scale up into a 3-ton stone piece, a sort of a monumental stone piece that I carved.
Wow!
It's a man stepping forward. I call it the flag bearer. It's named Breakthrough. It's a sort of archetypal force of stepping forward. The flagman crosses into new territory, crosses into new land. And there's a militaristic aspect to that, but it's also just that the man who carries the flag is the beating heart of a movement. And I wanted to capture that symbol. I wanted to capture that archetype, because we need to get the confidence to step forward. We need to push forward. You can grasp and you can look back at some of the gloriousness of the past, but we need to find ourselves now and where we're going. That's the important thing. The problem is that I feel like we end up sort of LARPing in the past. I love the word LARPing. So I've noticed a lot of people talk about it in Twitter. It's that you're sort of LARPing in the past. And I think to myself, but we're here now. I know it feels like holding your hand over a flame, and it's not nice. And a lot of people wish that this never happened where we are now, and where the art after the Second World and First World War. I get that. But we need to actually face where we are now and bring change now. Start dreaming now where we're going. Now is the point that we are the most powerful, and we can actually begin to start dreaming. So this is an example of me bringing together influences of Art Deco, Italian Futurism, looking at Russian constructivism, looking at vorticism, and trying to build a mix. It's early. This is an early sort of amalgamation of forms. It's not an absolute. This is still in flux, but I'm dreaming visually, and I'm trying to say what could actually begin to bring us out of where we are now. We need a far more sort of powerful, almost primitive expression of who we are, because we need to get to the crux of who we are. That's the problem. We've also kind of lost connection with who we are that's been sort of brought on us, indeed. I would say, but we've kind of lost connection with that, and we need to find out who we are now. We're not a 1700s man.
Mm.
You know, that's the problem. That's where I see the problem. But we can connect to the archetypes of the past, and we can connect to that glory and that strength and that Western heritage, and we can bring that forward, and we can dream now, and we can see where it's taking us. So this piece, this work, sort of brings all of that sort of passion and life that I'm feeling, and I want other artists to express that too. Painters, sculptors, writers. You know, who are we now? Where do we find ourselves? It's dark, but let's keep going. Let's dream of something more powerful and more glorious, as I often say.
I love looking at this and feeling the energy that you're describing in your own life, right? Do you dare? And
Do you dare?
here's this guy, he's daring, right? The flag bearer stepping out. And this was what it turned into?
Yeah, this was the large monumental sculpture in stone that I carved in a very brutal way. I carved it in a brutal way because when you carve sculpture in a brutal way, it smacks you in the face. It has a graphical, I mean, a lot of people have said that my work is almost graphical. And I think they're right,
Yeah.
because it has this graphical sense to it. And it's just, I'm looking for that immediacy, that sort of fist to the face, bam, wake up. This is where we are. Let's move forward from here. And that's manifesting in an aesthetic way. You know, and that's what I'm dreaming about now. But we need other artists to step forward.
How big is this thing, dude?
Well, this piece on its own, without the plinth, is somewhere in the region of about 180 to 2 meters tall. When you put it on the plinth, it goes even larger. I mean, it's a considerable piece. It's an, you know, we're talking about, it's from a stone of 3 ton. I wanted to make my mark in something like this because you have to understand the current art movement absolutely hates longevity, but stone lives forever. And so I was marking that point. I was sort of marking that cultural point, and I was saying, I'm going to carve these feelings into stone. I'm going to carve this passion into stone. And you know, it was stepping out. It was a case of stepping out and stepping into the firing line. I think that's what you need to do today. You need to draw fire. It's extremely important.
I love the size and the scale, and that in and of itself is a statement. Just occupying space is a political statement. This is why there was the whole bullshit around man spreading or whatever. They don't want you to take up space. They don't want you to be big or tall or strong or powerful or have an aura and a presence and energy felt at all. They want you to be diminished and small and wrapped up and soyed up with no shoulders and no balls, and to not break new ground or to be an explorer or to dare, and to not build or create, and to not gather people around a specific powerful energy. And it's really interesting. Well, you know, I studied art history in college and all this, but I still never really understood the power. And there were parts of me where if I listened in on 2 guys talking about art like this, it sounds like we're just jerking off over stupid shit. But it's so actually real and true and powerful and historic. It's almost like philosophy in the sense that if you can understand all the great conversations that have gone on throughout history, then you can insert yourself into those conversations and then participate in something that has spanned all of humanity, right? You can engage with Aristotle today in a way that's relevant and current, that means something to you. And if you can contribute to that canon, you can be a part of that ongoing dialogue, even though they're dead and gone. These pieces to me feel like they're in dialogue with the past, but also in dialogue with today, and hopefully setting the pace for the future. Talking about art like this is not masturbatory, even though I once would have thought that. These things have a lot of impact.
Well, you know, you actually put it in a really succinct way, Jack. I sort of run away with my own passions, but you put it in a very succinct way, in the sense that I'm having a conversation with what came before us.
Yes.
I'm trying to still stay connected with an archetypal past and a tradition. I'm a sculptor. I'm working in stone. That's one of the longest traditions that we have. I'm still using the same tools that sculptors have used for thousands of years. It's a tradition, whether you like it or not. And I'm carrying that forward. And I'm I often use the word dreaming. I'm dreaming of a future that is far more vibrant than where we are now. Because if we're not going to dream of the future and we're always going to hold ourselves purely in the past, and sometimes even hundreds of years in the past, I think to myself, okay, but how are we going to get there? This is going to be a step-by-step thing. This is going to be a staged thing. This is going to take some time. But we need to be able to make a step forward now, and I hope other collectives will come about as well. You know, when I make this sort of stuff, there is a brutality to it. But there's a brutality to it because I feel there's a sort of primitive brutality to it that I want people to immediately see. People don't have to sort of spend, hours sort of looking at this stuff. It's immediate. It's direct. It has a sort of power to it, and I want it to be a sort of a wake up, and I want it to be have a kind of a violence in the form and a sort of energetic dynamism. But there's also, I'm still totally open, and I think it's important to be open to other collectives that spawn around this time. I mean, of course, there should be other artists who are making far more traditional stuff. Of course, there's other artists who should be painting in the styles of the masters of 200, 300 years ago. Of course, there should. I'm just one guy who wants to take that fire of some of the revolutionary avant-garde movements of the early 1900s and sort of run with that fire, as I said, to act as a blowtorch to sort of blow through the nonsense of where we are now. That's the thing.
You're really good at using the language of energy, and it's no wonder. I mean, it comes out obviously in your stone sculpture, which still blows my mind. That you can do. I have no idea how you even start doing something like this, but the language that you use, talking to me, it's absolutely congruent with what I see coming out of the art as well. So kudos to you for that. It really
Thank you.
rings. It really rings authentic. Not that was up for debate, but it's even more powerful when it's so congruent. What about this one? This seems to be a little bit different to me in the sense that the other ones that we looked at were no machines, very simple, could be from any time, any place. A man with a flag. I think I've seen other ones where there's a man working and things. This one, very specific piece of machinery, of technology. What do we got going on here?
You mean this direct one on the screen now?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So this is a piece of work that I've named Momentum, which is, I mean, sort of on a profane level, this is a man on a motorcycle. But I love the archetype of speed and dynamism and pushing forward. And so I wanted to create just a big piece of stone sculpture that's 2 meters 40 and weighs a few tons. And I just wanted to bring this piece into a gallery space and just say, I love speed. I love danger. We should have confidence to be in that mind space. We should have confidence to, be in this love for danger, this love for speed, and I wanted to sort of capture that confidence. As I often say, it's that unapologetic confidence, and you just want to be able to bring a sort of an expression and say, this is what I stand for. This is who I am. This is who we are.
Dude, stone sculptures of this size and scale are big dick energy personified. This is big dick
Love
energy.
it.
I mean, we talk about that quite a bit on the show and on Twitter. Big dick energy is what we need. And it is it's a very off color way of saying confident movement. Fuck you. I will not comply. I am doing what I am doing, and these things that I am doing are meant to inspire other people to do what they want to do as well. Hopefully it's a chain reaction that sets off.
That's the wish.
Yeah, a
That's,
chain.
so sorry, Jack, do you want to carry
No,
on? Sorry.
no, go for it, man.
No, I mean, it's this thing, if there's one thing that I can achieve on the internet, it's making connections. I'm on Twitter, not, it's nice to see the follow count go up. Everyone likes that. I'm not here for that. I'm here to make connections. I want to build a community of people who are aesthetically sensitive and culturally interested, and we can vibe and we can come together. And it's a case of saying, if someone has a space, maybe someone out of this, out of what I'm doing online, maybe someone steps forward and says, look, I know a gallery, or I know a space, I know something where we can bring a collective of people together, and we can bring an absolute, incredible show of painters, sculptors, illustrators, whatever, who collectively stand against what's going on today. And I think that, that's the real potential of the internet, is that I'm excited about bringing and finding other people across the world who we can vibe with and who we can perhaps build a movement out of. I mean, as it is, I'm extremely thankful for people like Raw Egg, but also there's been other people who have reached out to me, other artists who are, somewhat anonymous, and they've invited me into small Discord channels where I can discuss my ideas and they shoot them down, or where I can dream in there and they can dream too. But I'm excited to see where this can go. As I said, the cracks are showing in the system. We might be able to, in a certain point of time, strike while the iron is hot and begin to sort of get a bit of momentum and stand for culture, stand for powerful culture, powerful emanations, and don't get too caught up in the politics, because I think that's the danger. A lot of people, it's like, are you making art that is truthful and strong and powerful, coming from your heart in the current situation, or are you making political propaganda? Be very careful of that, because it's a fine line.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that I think is important to take into account. If you start making political sculpture, you will get shut down aggressively.
Well, and it's also ephemeral. Political moments coming and going, the day to day trials and tribulations, those things are not evergreen. Whereas this art, you're expressing these ideas and energy, and the vibe this is evergreen. Well, it better be evergreen if we're going to make it. And
Yeah,
so,
sure.
when you tap into these things that have longevity, it has even more power. Now, I have thought often about, I do events, we travel around, we do, all kinds of different events. We've got stuff planned coming up. And one of the things that I am chewing on is like a show, combining music, comedy, visual art, sculpture, experiential kind of art, plus a party. And so what my first thought is like, how the hell are we going to get this shit across the ocean? The shipping charges on these things alone must be like $100 million. But I see the vision. I see the future of bringing these artists together and making it happen. I'm part of the reason why I do the podcast is to make connections and to bring people together and to amplify other voices that are singing the same song, or at least close.
Well, yeah. I mean, Jack, you're doing the right thing, and that's the thing that I really am thankful for. You see the potential of art connecting to people on a very deep level, and you see the potential of what it can do, ultimately art is there to heighten your vibration.
Yes.
And I often look back at civilizations and I think you can judge a great civilization by the art that it made. And if the art that it made was truly it was great art, it was raising the vibration of those people. And when people are in a higher vibration, they are transcending and they're going beyond themselves, in thought, in the things they manifest, the way they live. If people are in a higher vibration, then literally, miracles can happen, incredible
Yes.
things can take place.
Yes.
And that is what art can do. It taps into a very, very, very deep part of the psyche, and it activates that. And that's the important thing.
Dude, we're vibing so hard. I literally more goosebumps. It's actual physical resonance, right? Because you said that when we get people on a higher vibration, miracles can happen. And my way of putting people on a higher vibration is through community building, is getting people together in the same place who share the similar values and just get the connections going. Like that's my job, is
Absolutely.
to
Absolutely.
foster harmonious relations among the brothers of the Liminal Order, and on a bigger scale, of anybody that listens to my content. And that you can see it. You can see the joy on people's faces when they come together and they break bread and they drink wine and they share ideas and they breathe the same air and have like an energy exchange. It lifts everybody up. They walk out of the events on a higher vibration, as you say, and then they carry it on into, back into their lives, and it spreads in their behavior, and then their behavior has results, and that's how you make some real change, man. And man, it's just exciting for me.
100%.
It's exciting
100%. 100%.
talking to you
No,
about
100%,
this.
Jack. 100%, Jack. It really is about that, and I think it's that mind level. If you tap into that, then that's why I always say if you get artists together who can make strong expressions, then and it raises the energy, it raises the vibration, then it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable because it spreads. It's a domino effect, and as you say, in your movements or in what you're doing, you see people are kind of activated afterwards. Their vibration is higher. But you notice when you're in a higher vibration, you're more confident. You can think clearly. You take risks. You're ready to push forward. You're ready to make those steps. And we've been kind of kept under a sort of a blanket for so long now. And people are very kind of morbid and weak, and they have this, they're not aspiring. The great thing about art is that it has you looking upwards. It goes beyond yourself, looking upwards towards archetypal forms and something beyond. It should inspire. It should make you want to go beyond yourself. And that's the power of art. But as I said, if you have that, it's unstoppable. It's unstoppable. That's my belief.
It is indeed. We're getting a bunch of questions in the chat. I know you and I talked about futurism. I can't remember if we talked about it already in the show, but let's talk about the Italian futurists and their philosophical outlook. Why is it relatable today? What from their movement do we want to accept? What from their movement do we want to reject? Because we're not taking any of these things whole hog. What is your influence there from the futurists in particular? There's been a ton of questions about this in the chat, by the way. So
it's a fantastic question, and it's a question that is often asked to me at different exhibitions, as they say, but you're inspired by the Italian futurists, so are you an Italian futurist? Well, of course not. I'm not an Italian futurist. I go back to the same thing again. I really dislike LARPing, and I think I'm not going to LARP as an Italian futurist. Look, I'm a British guy, and I'm not going to LARP as a vorticist either. But I can look at the fire that they left behind. The problem is that I'm not caught up. For a lot of people, I'm not caught up in their, in the Italian futurist or the vorticist sort of philosophies too heavily. I mean, they certainly said some great things, and there was some glory there. But I think if you look at their aesthetic language, I'm excited by that, because the aesthetic language that they left behind has the ingredients that, as I say, it has that, it's very energetic. The vorticists and the futurists and that period of time supernovaed. It's supernovaed, and it was a star that burnt extremely brightly, and it burnt out. It burnt out. But you need that energy now. If you bring that energy now, it has the potential of being a blowtorch, because it's so damn inspiring and it's so direct. That's the thing. That's why I look back at those movements, or that's why I'm grabbing at those movements. I'm not trying to be an Italian futurist. I'm dreaming about where we can go from now. If you look at what they've done, they've left some real hearty, fire in the belly expressions. Run with that. Take that energy and see where it can go now. It's like you can look even further back, but can you dream in those movements? That's also the thing that's important. It's like, how many people can truly make the incredible work of Michelangelo and Donatello? I mean, it's glorious work and it's incredible, but it has a refinement. As I say, we're living in a sort of aesthetic and cultural dark age. It has a refinement that isn't of today. We need to bring a sort of, my belief is that we need to bring a sort of gutsy, direct, um, sort of almost brutal, primitive sort of expression of who we are now. And then we can start to build upon that. I look at it like a howitzer round. We need to clear ground and then we can run forward.
That's an
That's the thing.
excellent. That's an excellent analogy. And the futurists, at their time, they're reacting to the wars. They're seeing the death and just the destruction of World War One, and they're thinking to themselves, "Man, we don't like World War One, like around then. We don't
Well, they came. Yeah, they came a bit before that.
before then."
They came a bit before that, but a lot of them died in the First World War. Actually,
Okay,
a number of them died off. Marionetti, the main guy who wrote the manifesto, he was a poet, and extraordinarily enough, the guy became a war hero. They loved war. They loved the idea of war. Let's say the glory in it, because I mean, there is a glory to war to a certain degree. There's sort of man goes to face his maker. Let's say you go there, you go and do battle, and on a sort of deeply primal level, there's something there. There's definitely something there that is full of energy and vitality. And a number of people who have seen war say that it was the most glorious time that they've been in. It made them feel alive. Some people actually miss it. There's something there. There's a lot of energy in war, and they were looking at that. Many of them died. Marionetti survived, and he sort of carried on to a certain degree. But essentially, the First and the Second World War killed modernism. It essentially destroyed that energy. As I say, it supernovaed. It was a star that was burning extraordinarily brightly. And that energy and that lust for violence and power and sort of, that sort of, I don't know, this extremely high vibrational energy, it sort of blew itself out to a degree. That's the way I paint the picture in my mind. But it doesn't mean it can't come back.
Yeah, I guess I had the time off just slightly, and maybe I'm mixing up the manifestos that I've read. But there, like, let's say the interim war period, there was definitely artistic and aesthetic movements there that were disrupted by the war, disgusted by the war, disgusted by the sclerotic nature of political environment, the disconnection from any health and vibrancy, poison gas. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh yeah, no, absolutely.
it's everywhere. And so these guys were looking to, in some ways, escape all that shit and build something brand new and futurist. But the reason why I'm digging into this a little bit is because the language that you said, the aesthetic language is valuable. Politically speaking, I think the message that I read into some of these was to discard the past, to discard what had led us to these points where they felt the need to have a manifesto, to make the change, to get away from something. And so for me, when I'm translating this into what could be a contemporary movement for us, there's at once a desire to break out forward, but also to look backwards, to be informed by historical archetypes and just the things that are built into us. And so that to me is where I love this fusion that I'm seeing in the work, is that it is futurist. It does use this language, the aesthetic language. It does want this momentum to plant the flag, to reach out, to strike. But at the same time, the irony of our day is that is looking back, but the way forward is sort of like looking back into history. Did that come out right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, it's you're definitely on there. I mean, I often say that you kind of look back to go forward.
Yeah.
But I want people to understand that it's only a momentary grab to go forward. To bring up that thing again, I don't think it's going to give us any. I don't think it's going to bear fruit dwelling too sort of. You shouldn't dwell too long in the past, and kind of, as I've mentioned before, like you sort of wish that all this never happened. You've got to be able to take some of the fire that these individuals had, that sense of dreaming, and you've got to be able to bring it now. And you've got to be able to take the primeval and the archetypal of what made us who we are as Westerners, and reinvigorate that now, but also dream about it in the future and where it's going. I think that's very, very important. And the thing that I love about the early modernists is they had this element of still connecting to the past, still connecting to where we sort of come from, but imagining it now and bringing that power now. I think that's the vital thing, because if we're not involved in the now and we're constantly living in the past, then we've sort of lost touch of who we are now, and we need to dream now. That's the thing. But as I've said before, I don't think it's a problem that people are still looking back to tradition hundreds of years ago and emulating that style. I think that's great. If it brings other art collectives joy and energy, then that's wonderful. That's great. But I'm sort of steaming forward in a more avant-garde, for lack of a better word, it's like I'm inspired by that revolutionary kind of spirit, because I think we need to sort of steamroll through a lot of what we've got going on today.
We need to do this, what this guy's doing to the other guy there. Talk. Wow, that's going to sound weird on the audio podcast. We put up another piece of Fen's. Tell us about it.
So this piece is entitled Struggle, and it's actually essentially it's inspired by the wrestlers. I mean, I've looked back at through time. If you look at the Romans, if you look at past civilizations, even before that, the Greeks, they had this wonderful archetypal showing of wrestlers. And it's a great archetype in itself, because it talks about that struggle of life, or that difficulty where we face an opponent. But who is the opponent? It's someone within us, or it's someone before us. Maybe it's physical, or maybe it's spiritual. And I wanted to sort of embody that energy in quite a sort of brutal manifestation. Straight lines, straight edges. I'm being inspired. This work again is sort of being inspired by Art Deco. It's looking at Futurism, Futurism, and it's trying to pull that language together and create a sort of early modernist mega mix in a sense. And it's trying to dream in that language now, but I'm trying to look still further on, and so. Yeah. This work is every piece of sculpture, every piece of art. You can look at it on a skin deep level, or you can look at it beyond that on a far deeper sort of primal or archetypal way. Everyone will view art on different levels. Some people will look at art and just say, "Oh, I don't like the style," for example. The style doesn't resonate with me. Other people will say, "I like the style, and I can see what he's trying to fight for and trying to bring." And trying to sort of bring into focus. Or some people say that they don't like the style, but they like what at least the archetype stands for. So everyone will view art on many different ways. Or people will say, I just love it. It's explosive and it has the energy that I want, and there it is.
Yeah.
I think it's important to understand.
Yeah, it is. It is important. There's multiple layers of communication coming through, and it's all going to relate to the individual on a unique basis because of what we bring into the art interpretation, and we bring our context and our emotional state and our political ideas. We bring that into the engagement with the art. And again, some of the words I'm even saying long ago me would laugh at some of the art gobbledygook coming out of my mouth, but I believe this all to be absolutely true and powerful. And if guys out there, if sitting around talking about art isn't necessarily your thing, at least pay attention to this conversation and see how there is authentic expressions that we're talking about. These have real powerful impact on people, and it's connected to history, and we can bring things forward and change the world and shape the future and build communities all through the artistic expression, which is so, I'm not the first person to pick up on this trend, by the way. Let's take a fly through here. Is this your studio? This your studio here, or is this an exhibition?
So this is actually an exhibition space. This is a large exhibition space where I had my my last sort of show, where I was just showing these really heavy pieces of stone, really large works This piece is like 2 meters 40. It's large work. It's heavy work. I wrote the manifesto for this show. It was about bringing a sort of confidence and a kind of glory, grabbing ground, taking up space, as you say. It was really about that. And the sort of fire in this show was about trying to work with stone and solidify the feelings and the thoughts and the sort of metaphysical, but have it realized in a very physical, as I say, almost brutal graphical sense. Being inspired by Art Deco, looking at the Italian Futurists, looking at Vorticism. The thing that's fascinating is you do a show like this, you have hundreds of people who come, and you get to see, as I said before, who's resonating with it. Some people resonate. Some people get quite upset. Some people become triggered, as as often said. Some people become quite upset by it that you're making such a expression in stone. People, if you look at the art world today, they want everything to be quite ethereal. You know what I'm saying, Jack? It's like it needs to they don't want it to be able to last. They love this idea that it can just be temporary. It's a temporary thing. And then you roll on. Oh, this is another piece of work of mine. That's actually the breakthrough work.
Beautiful.
Again, very sort of large, heavy. There's a brutalist element there, but it's also this dynamism, this movement, this stepping forward. And I wanted to, again, take that language, that sort of primitive language, but also add a blend of movement in there. And yeah.
Beautiful. Really amazing work. I'm inspired. The people in the chat are inspired. I'm sure people that attended the exhibits were inspired as well. What is next for you, my friend? Where are you going? What are you doing? What's up on the agenda? How do we get people in touch with you? This is the part where you share how people can find you, all these things.
Well, I think if there's, as I've said before, Jack, if there's one thing I can do, I'm looking for people to join me on this journey. So I need people to, show some support. Find me on Twitter, Fen de Villiers. You can just search my name. You'll find me on Twitter. You find my website, fendevilliers.com. Join the sort of this energy. Get involved with me. Reach out to me if there's one thing that I can do now. I need to find like-minded people who have spaces, people who have galleries, people who want to actually show something else, people who want to dare. As I say, we come back to this again. Dare to do something different in this time. Don't just go with the flow. Even if it feels uncomfortable and you're a little bit scared or a little bit worried or absolutely terrified, use that as a compass to go towards. That's the most important thing. It's probably, if you're scared about something, you should probably go towards it. That's sort of what I live by. Go towards that fear. And I need other people, other artists to step forward. If we can't have other artists stepping forward and dreaming with us on this, and bringing other aesthetic manifestations, then we'll just end up remaining an internet movement. You need to have boots on the ground. You need to be, as I said, as I've referred to before, you need to be in the trenches.
Yeah.
This is where the battle is. You got to have boots on the ground. Otherwise, nothing's going to change, and you will continually over time. You'll just lose even more ground. There's a lot of people, on the more conservative side of things, who have looked at what's been going on in the art world, and they've looked at it and said, that'll never happen. It's not going to gain any more ground. And unfortunately, they've let all of this happen. They've sort of watched it happen, and now that it's here, they're right at your gate. What are you going to do? Your back's against the wall. Are you going to do something about it now? We're going to wait another 10 years. As it continues to march forward, they're marching. We are still losing ground. Got to get out there and start taking some ground back. That's the important thing.
Take some ground, dare to do something, occupy space, project your power. Don't be afraid to dominate a situation, circumstance, your life. Get things done. Build and create, gentlemen. Build and create. That's what we're all about in the Liminal Order. That's what Fen is all about. That's what all the guests on the show are all about. We're all trying to build and create and make something that's going to have a positive impact on the world, because the world needs it. The world needs it.
Absolutely.
Ben, thank you so much for coming on the show. I have loved every second of it. The artwork is spectacular. We're going to blow you up on Twitter and get you connected to people all across the world that are going to appreciate what you're doing. It's a really wonderful feeling when you figure out and connect with people from all over, that you're not alone, you're not crazy. At our events, when you're sitting there with like 80 people and everybody there has a similar vernacular and a similar idea and similar myths and similar emotions about things, it's really an incredible experience. So you're not alone, bro. We're going to get you hooked up to people all over the world and promote your work, because it's powerful. It can have a huge impact. And it's so cool to see this alignment that we've got coming at it from completely different universes, from different experiences, different, artists and books and everything that we've read differently to get to this same point. It's really speaks to the power of what we're doing and the need for it. So thank you very much, guys. Any last words, sir?
Jack. Yeah, thank you so much, Jack. I think you've done a great summary there. Now is the time to connect. Now is the time to really, come together and start dreaming. Start dreaming now, so we can see where we're going aesthetically, and around that we'll have an organic movement forming. That's my wish. That's my dream.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
All right, thanks
guys,
so much.
My pleasure. Guys, take this show, share it, retweet it, publish it, send it out. Help us spread the word. Hit subscribe, boost it on the algorithm, all the things that we need to do to game the system, because they're holding us down. So send it out there. Thank you to everybody on the audio podcast who's been listening for all these years. I really appreciate it. And with that, everybody, we are out.
On this show, we're driven by curiosity. We want to chart a path forward. Best people, best conversations. We're on a journey, and it's just getting started.